Hi, this is Tina Powell, host of In the Suite, where I sit down with top women leaders and some of the biggest names in the financial services and the wealth management industry. Together, we'll discover some of their best secrets and top strategies to grow a great business, build a strong brand, and lead teams in the 21st century. I hope you'll enjoy hearing their amazing personal stories of triumph, trepidation, and transformation in hopes of becoming better leaders ourselves. The time for you to lead is now, and you're in the suite. Today's episode with Bonnie Ashby Sewell is inspired by a woman as smart and as tough as they come. Carol Ashby, aka Bonnie's mom, also affectionately known as Mrs. Holmes, Holmes, named after Home Street, worked her tail off, took chances, and defied the odds. History repeats itself, and in getting to know Bonnie, her smile and intellect, her work with women, divorce and transition, and some of her own origin story, well, it reads like a carbon copy. Growing up in a single-family home in a wealthy community in a little house in Chicago would help set the stage for a successful career in financial services that spans 3 decades and continues to flourish. Bonnie Ashby Sewell is CEO of American Capital Planning, LLC, a female-owned fiduciary and fee-only wealth management company located in Leesburg, Virginia, outside of D.C. Bonnie has been working as a certified financial planner for families since 1992. Previous to that, she owned a tax practice. She is a certified financial planner, CFP, an accredited investment fiduciary, AIF, a certified divorce financial analyst, CDFA, and a certified exit planning advisor, CEPA. Bonnie also prepares expert testimony for private arbitration and court cases relating to divorce and works in mediation and private negotiations. Bonnie's work has been featured on CNBC, Investment News, NAPFA, FPA, AICPA, and the list goes on. She served on National Board for the Financial Planning Association, the South Region Board for the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors, and Foundation for the Financial Planning Board. She is past president on the board of directors for the nonprofit Loudoun Therapeutic Riding. Bonnie is a true giver and continues to serve as a volunteer speaker at the monthly nonprofit Secondary Saturday Divorce Workshop in Fairfax, Virginia. And now she's volunteered for the George C. Marshall International Center, where she's putting together a virtual visionary leadership speaker services for them that's running now from May to October. And as you'll hear during this discussion in the suite, Bonnie is all about giving back and teaching women in divorce and transition all about how to be fluent in their own money and confident in their own financial lives. She lists a ton of resources which you can find in the show notes that accompany this episode. And above all that, I promise this special time with Bonnie Ashby Sewell will, as she states it, knock the doors off your hopes and dreams and inspires you to reimagine your life. Bonnie, it's wonderful to see you. I'm so glad that we're having this opportunity to talk. You look well. How are things going? How are the kids? How's the practice? How are you? You're bright and cheery today.
Thank you, Tina. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on. Murray and I are a blended family. We've been together 11 years, 10 married this fall. And thank you. And in our blended family, we share 6 adult children, youngest 35, and 12 grandchildren. 3 of those young men are serving in the U.S. Navy, and we have 3 great grandsons. So got a big crowd to keep track of.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that everybody's okay, and congratulations and thank you to your family members that are serving right now. I think that this virus has made us really appreciate people in all areas that are helping to just maintain the health and the wellness of our country and our safety and security. So with that, God bless them all. And congratulations on your upcoming 10th anniversary. I'm so proud of that too. That's great things to celebrate. Look, in lieu of these last couple months, which has been really hard and difficult for people, I love to hear the celebrations and the milestones. And I do think that it is time that we celebrate. I have a cousin whose daughter's turning 10 on Saturday, double digits. And so I'm trying to put together like a little box of something so that it arrives and it just, makes people happy, because I think that's what it's all about right now. And to your point, I love what you just said about sharing stories. You and I, Bonnie, share a lot of common themes in our lives.
We do. And women don't tend to tell their stories outside their families a lot. We're a little bit more reserved that way, I think. And it would be helpful if we would tell our stories more to each other, because the commonalities make us realize we always think we're the first or the last or the worst. And usually someone else has gone there before.
Yeah, well, welcome in the suite. This is all about storytelling. This is all about making sure that we're getting these stories out in front of both women and men. And one of the things that's always motivated me is to hear how other people have mastered their career. And most importantly, get through some of the tough parts. We are going to talk about some of the struggles, because the last few months have been struggling for people, and you've been advising your clients at American Capital Planning, and you've been in business now for, I want to say, over 35 years, working as an advisor. We're going to talk about all the initials after your name. That's a whole nother discussion. And it is about sharing those types of stories, because if people have done it, if people have come before you and they've done it, then it's doable, right?
Yes, and our industry has very few, still too few female advisors, and you get an even smaller number when you look at the number of women that own a wealth management firm. It's growing, but women face all the same problems we've faced for a long time, and I would love to see more women firm owners. That would be a real step in the right direction.
Well, Bonnie, it's one of the reasons that I asked you to be in the suite today. And I thank you again for the generosity of your time today and all of the life experience that you'll bring to our listening audience today. A good reason, another thing to celebrate, as we're on the theme of positivity right now, just the other day, May 15th to be exact, there's an article about you making rain, but rain in a good way. And you're featured in the ABA law practice about being a female rainmaker. And I loved how you framed about how you explain what you do and what your practice, what American Capital Planning stands for. So I'm going to break it down, because for those of you who are listening who've not yet worked with a financial advisor, it's not about the money. It's really not. It's about everything that happens around that money. But listen to Bonnie as she explains it in this article. I'll frame it for you. Number one, we help you successfully and financially work through life transitions. Big topic for women. Number two, we map your finances to the things you tell us you care most about. Number three, we manage your finances long-term so that you can go live your life, enjoying the resources that you've built. So my first reaction to that was wow. Sign me up, Bonnie. I'm on board.
So all of those things should track pretty closely to any good advisor, right? That's not unique to good advisors. I think what people who don't work with an advisor might appreciate or be scared off by at first is it's a really intimate relationship. In our society, we don't talk about money very easily or often. But if you eavesdrop, I'm not encouraging that in the biggest way, but if you just eavesdrop for a week and do that thought experiment of listening to other people's conversation, it's kind of surprising, not to us, but to other listeners, how often every conversation comes back to money. It's a really common concern, and it weighs on people, and it's also something to celebrate. So in our boutique firm, it's a little ironic being called a rainmaker because we don't have a big, huge firm. We've never built an empire, but we have a solid firm, and this firm's been in existence for over 10 years. I've been in the business for just over 30. We serve 32 families, and we manage just under $50 million to do that. But aside from that, one of the problems we're trying to solve solve as advisors is how people go through transitions. And the two that we work on are when you're leaving a spouse or a spouse is leaving you, and when you're selling a business and how you get out of that business, not just whole, but thriving. And that's your baby many times that you've birthed. I'm a small business person, so I have done this with other families, and we have 6 out of our 32 families are business owners. But on the divorce side, we work on 10 to 15 cases a week. So it's a very busy divorce financial planning practice. And the great thing about that is we've developed a lot of expertise on complex matters. So we will serve anybody that can pay our fee. It's a flat fee or a retainer. But we really do our best to work with high net worth, complex divorce situations. And we've consulted around the country. Most of our divorces here in the DC area.
That's an amazing number of cases. Have you noticed any uptick in the amount of cases because of coronavirus? I know one of the things that was talked about in the media is the escalation of domestic violence. And, now that we're starting to see things open up, I think that you can really tell a great deal about a person when you're under a pandemic situation. Have you noticed more calls and more inquiries?
So we have a monthly workshop that we put on. It's a give back to the community where we talk about finance, and we have lawyers and we talk about the law. And we've been doing that for many years. And that is still well attended, although it's currently virtual. But the courts have been closed recently. We have not seen an uptick in cases. In fact, we're not working on as many cases right now as we normally would be. We expect that to blow up and be more than the 10 to 15 cases per week when this lifts. And that's for a couple of reasons. But there's a little rainbow at the end too. But on the downside, we expect families who are thinking about this to probably be pushed to the edge of making a decision. So we do expect more divorces after this opens up or concludes or whatever it looks like, when people can finally breathe again and make sense of things. It's a little bit paralyzing to think about divorce when you're in the middle of something. So we saw the same thing in 2007, 2008, and 2000. So when but when people's finances are under stress, it pauses and then pulls up heavier when that releases. The rainbow piece is that some people are spending a lot less money. And if money was the issue or too heavy a work schedule, everyone's working, it's a crazy treadmill. I'm not judging that, but it's exhausting. And if in this period, families were able to breathe and look around and shifting priorities, make different choices for themselves, there is a possibility that some people who are headed towards divorce may reconsider their lives and think differently and put their lives back together differently. So just like everything else we're going to have to do after this, we can reimagine marriage and we can reimagine how that looks.
I noticed myself that my expenses and the things that I view important, just how I make decisions. I know that this will affect me and my life, and I no longer need stuff in the same way. So I do hope that it brings people together and that they do, if it was because of money. That's such an interesting point that you brought up. I never even thought about that. I want to go back to what you said just before about this workshop and this virtual workshop, because I've been through divorce. It's like ripping off a limb, and it's really super, super hard. And I don't think there's anything hard. Well, there's lots of things that are hard, but this is right up there on the stress level. Do you want to talk a little bit about that virtual workshop? Is it for people who are contemplating divorce? Is it only for your clients? Is there a charge?
Yeah, great questions. There is no charge. There's 2 versions of it. They can sign up through Meetup or through the local attorney that hosts the normally in-person version. So there's 2 versions of it all the time, but now both versions happen to be virtual. So the 2-hour on-demand webinar that we have is strictly financial. We offer that to anyone. And it's really to push the idea out into the public that they have choices before they sign, and we want them to consider those choices. In the other workshop where we have the attorneys and us, I speak for less time. So it's sort of an introduction to what you should be thinking about with your finances. And the attorneys speak for a longer period of time. And it is specific to Virginia, Maryland, and DC. So anyone can join us. But it will provoke you into thinking about how to choose a lawyer and how to think about the process of divorce. One of the things that we know that the public doesn't know, this might be your one and only divorce, one would hope. But I went through divorce as an adult, and my divorce is different from everyone else's divorce. But as a professional in that space, I can tell them clearly, you're going to survive this. Everyone does, and you'll be okay. But the choices you make in this process will determine how okay you are. And that's what the workshop tries to introduce them to.
And so if I'm a woman right now and I'm contemplating divorce, do I go to a financial advisor first, or do I go to a lawyer first? How do you navigate this? Who do you call first? Do you look to the attorney to give you the recommendation for the advisor, or vice versa, or just somebody that's been through it? Walk us through and get us that first step out of the fog.
Sure. And it is that fog is a real thing, because most of the people we deal with are real smart, real kind, normal people that are going through a really tough time. And they're just not thinking well because it is a grief process that they find themselves in. And self-serving as it sounds, I really want people to see a financial person early in the process. There's no escaping that you must know your legal rights, because that's the backstop, right? If I know the limits of my legal rights, I'll have that context when I'm thinking about my finances. But all of our best ethical and busiest attorneys, because we feed them actually more than they feed us. We have a great list of folks, and those people understand their channel, and their expertise is the law. By contrast, we are not allowed to, nor do we speak about the law. We stay in our channel, which is understanding finances. And if you think about it, if you're the person looking for help in this situation, people always say your house is your biggest financial transaction, but if you're facing divorce, this now is your biggest financial transaction, because even if you're Jeff Bezos, your business fits inside the divorce, as does all your property, your income, your debts, everything. So that's how important it is to get it right. And if you think about most of us living our lives that aren't financial professionals, aren't steeped in it all the time with the alphabet soup behind our names, we're getting people up to speed on their own finances and the larger picture of finances, and how theirs have to get from where they are to the other side, so that both Dick and Jane can pay their bills and have a foundation for their future.
So having that financial knowledge first will even dictate maybe the timing and the specific nature of your divorce, and every divorce situation is different. Whereas I feel that when you go to an attorney, and again, these are things that I personally go through, and attorneys like, yeah, let's get this show on the road, where a financial advisor, I want to make sure that, and I'm very clear on this episode right now, that you have certifications related to both financial planning and divorce. And those are as follows. That is the CFP designation, the Certified Financial Planner, a very, very rigorous credential to get. A Certified Divorce Financial Analyst, that's a CDFA, an Accredited Investment Fiduciary, AIF, and a Certified Existing Planner Advisor, CEPA, right? Do I have all of those initials correct? CFP, CDFA, AIF, CEPA. Ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't kidding you when I said that she had alphabet soup.
And a master's degree in financial planning. And the irony of all of that is that I was told I wasn't college material. So there you go.
Well, no, you can't drop that there without us kind of having a talk. Take us back. I mean, these are clearly, you've gone through a cadence and a rigor of your own academic and career here with all of these certifications. I mean, this has probably taken years and years to amass this. So when did this all start? When did you get the inkling to go into financial planning as a profession?
Well, as a kid, I was growing up in a single parent home inside a wealthy community. So that set up oh my gosh, how do you get to where my friends are with saltwater pools in the backyards of their homes in Chicago? We were in a little house trying to keep it. And so that set that up. And then when I married the guy that I moved in with at 19, because I had zero confidence, and became a wife and started moving around the country, having children, etc., his pay packages started getting much more complicated. He was an executive in the food industry, and I wanted to understand what's a stock option, etc. My early jobs before I got interested in financial planning was I was a cost analyst at an engineering company after school. And that taught me critical path management, man, equipment, time on a timeline. If you want this result, you got to have these things fall into place. Later, I became a tax pro out in California as a young mom. That was something I could fit into momdom. So I did that. And then as we moved out of California and around the country further, I started to learn about this CFP. This was back in the day before there was even a big exam. So I got my CFP in 1992, started studying it in 1990. And it just, one thing led to another, and it's a lot of fun helping people. That is the essence of what we do. But the other thing that's so ironic to me, having been told I wasn't very bright and certainly not college material, is that I have an appreciation for women in particular, although we change their scripts, when they say something like, this is a dumb question, but, or they lack confidence around money. Part of my job is to say, we're going to make you be able to tell your friends, should you ever desire to, what you own, why you own it, and why you care. And we get them fluent in their own money. They don't have to know what we know. They just have to be confident in their own financial lives.
I love that. I love that. One of the things that I think that you're especially good at is your communications to your clients. And it was interesting. So last month, Diana Britton in wealthmanagement.com, she said this, she quoted actually a survey, Limmer Research found that 64% of people who had contact with their advisor felt that the conversation eased their concerns and worries. And with all of these themes that we're talking about, divorce and separation and the pandemic and children at home and working at home, and now your career has changed and now you might be unemployed, you really need an advisor who understands the tenets of communication. I don't know how many of your videos that I watched. I watched a lot. How long have you been using video to communicate with your clients? I think your videos are outstanding.
Thank you. I think it's been about 6 years, and we make them everything from 2 minutes. Here's how you save a file if you've never done it before. We do meet when we had a case this past year where a woman, 34 years in a marriage, did not know how to save a computer file. So we sent over a little 2-minute video showing her. All she had to do was click on it and follow the instructions. All the way up to dissected the CARES Act, as many advisors did, and we provided that along with a handout. And in our handout, we included information. Look, if you're looking for a job, here is real-time hiring link and other things. So if you just think about, humanity, right? Like, what does someone need when we're going through this? What's so easy for us, but really hard for them? And the CARES Act is a great example.
Oh yeah. That and PPP, right? Paycheck Protection Program, all of these laws, right? These changes right now. I have never seen like a more volatile environment as it relates to stocks and the market and all types of financial instruments, but more importantly, the law that dictates how those instruments have an effect on your life and your bottom line.
So I'm going to tell you a little story. We have often talked about getting bracelets that say RTFD, read the effing document because the difference between us and an advisor who cannot help, and I don't want to critique advisors, we're doing the best we can, all of us, but one way we were able to stand out in this period to local businesses who weren't familiar with us is we took the 338 pages of the PPP and we read it and we highlighted it and we shared the information. So we joke about that because that's our expertise in divorce too. We read documents that oftentimes neither the attorney, the judge, or the client has ever bothered to read, and in there lies the answer.
And so you reminded me of Carolyn McClanahan, Dr. McClanahan, who was also a CFP, and she read every single page of the Affordable Care Act. I have such gratitude for you ladies right now. You couldn't pay me to do that. And what I think where we really lean into each other, and certainly experts like you, is that we need that interpretation, but the way that you tell the story, again, through the videos and through your own kind of communications, you use humor, right? So you're so smart. And I don't know if that's intentional or if that's just part of your personality, but I feel like you use it so well because these are topics we need to talk about the dark sides. And how do you have a great conversation? How do you leave your advisor's office or your Zoom meeting or even a conversation of just saying, wow, I'm really glad that I had that conversation, as difficult as it was. You made me laugh through some of those videos. And believe me, this was when volatility was going crazy after a time. So do you want to share a little bit of that? Is that intentional or not? I mean, I'm a communications professional and I'm deeply curious.
Well, I guess, so I think about it this way, and Dina, it won't surprise you to learn not everyone finds that quite so endearing. But growing up in Chicago, we often say that sarcasm is a loving form of language for us. But sarcasm, which is part of the way I see humor, is just looking around and seeing the silliness of what you're presented with. So it's not intentional, except for I am always looking for the lighter side of things because my brain goes to the dark side. That's my default. And in order to survive my own head, I need to find humor in things. And when I find someone funny, I turn into a groupie and my sister is funny and my brother is funny and my mother was funny. And it's just a joy to be around people who have a weird view of the world and can make you laugh, that belly laugh. I love it. And so it's funny. Some of my clients are pretty funny too. And they're the ones I really enjoy spending time with. They crack me up. Everyone has trouble, but trouble teaches. So everything teaches. We're all trying not to be overwhelmed when trouble shows up, and humor makes that easier. And I feel like in this, and maybe I just don't know who they are, but I feel like we really could use some great comedians as show people to sort of take the edge off. And I would love to know if someone's found someone like that. I think the guy in the car who sings is entertaining. I don't know his name. I'm not very TV oriented. But anyway, all that to say that it's not so intentional so much as you just want to lighten people's load, because the imagination is so much stronger for the worry than any real facts most of the time. Facts will pass on, that we will get through this. But the imagination around it is pretty overbearing.
And you talk about some of the facts, and I like also, too, how you poise your discussions around information from reliable, the emphasis of the word reliable sources. What types of information should we be looking towards? And I'll be the first one to say it. There's stuff in the feed that I don't pay attention to.
So think about it this way. It's a great question, because if you think about it, some of the sources that we let in, we put them in our lives, Twitter, Facebook, what I call the social sewer, originally called social media, but it's really turned into a thing of they're measuring us and our responses to things and the dopamine that we're experiencing when we keep going in for more. It's so easy to get sucked into a discussion where you have no expertise beyond an opinion, and neither does anyone else in the conversation. So those can be fun, but it's really hard, at least for me, to keep my perspective and say, we're all just jamming. We're all just talking to each other, and none of it has any weight except for what we're feeling. So for sources of information, and this goes all the way back to my high school training of the, edit yourself and go check to see what the source is and who is behind the source. So primary sources are a way we say that to clients. And that could be one of the few papers of record, which is not New York Times, it's Reuters or AP, the ones that feed, and occasionally hard-hitting reporters from the biggest newspapers, which would include New York Times, Washington Post. But this is a small number of people that do their research, come in with facts, and clearly state when something is not a fact. So that's that part of it. And then when we're looking for information on Social Security, Medicare, or that CARES Act, you can actually go to the source that wrote it today, the Social Security site, the IRS site, most revenue sites for your state, and did I say Medicare, and then the actual Congress sites where the bills are written. You can go to all of these primary sources. Now, for a lot of people, that's going to be way too much work. But my point in focusing people on primary sources is before you take my word for it, ask me what my sources are. I will almost always tell people, when we do our PowerPoints or our video presentations, I'm a real stickler for saying, here's where we got the information. I don't want everyone taking things on faith. I want them to ask hard questions and expect good answers.
And a good advisor will want to have a debate with you in a good way. We all have a responsibility to make sure that we have our own fundamental set of knowledge and of standards. And, you bring up a really good, important point here. And just in case that you're listening, or maybe you're on a treadmill right now, or maybe you're just walking or driving, don't worry. I will do the best job ever here on the show notes to make sure that we have those sources and that attribution just listed, because I do feel it's really important. And again, you just remind us, it's a call to arms to, before you go and you have a discussion with someone, hey, don't just take it at face value. Ask the hard questions. What's behind that recommendation? Where are they getting their information from? And you too should look at those sources and make a decision for yourself. Weigh it on your own terms.
Yes, and we're building up trust over time when people can rely on something because we have provided the source. A recent example, and it's kind of a dull one, but it points up exactly what we're talking about. When the IRS moved the deadline, first they moved the filing deadline, then they moved the payment deadline. We had to look at all the states where our clients are. And of course, a lot of them are here in Virginia. Virginia did not move its date for a while. Finally, it moved its date. And then it finally, at the very last minute, after a meeting when it was supposed to announce, several days after, moved the payment date. But the media had been reporting all of this well ahead of the two sites, IRS and Virginia Revenue, saying that these things were true. So you want to believe it. And I got articles from clients saying, is this true? And I said, it could be. Let's go check the source. So I'd come back and I'd quote the source, and we could watch together that until Virginia says it's true, it isn't true. But we did get confirmation, but we don't want people making tax decisions or other kinds of decisions without the actual source that will be true for them. And it's one thing to have a debate about things that involve feelings or are inconsequential, but when they matter, it's really important to get those primary sources.
What is the biggest question right now that clients are asking about? We've seen laws, we've seen the environment be very volatile right now. I'm just curious what people are kind of coming in with and what problems are they trying to solve for right now?
The biggest ones we're seeing are a blend of economic and personal. They're trying to understand for themselves what is their real risk at getting sick or getting someone else sick. They're trying to get their arms around that. And our constant answer to date, because I have no better information at my hands, is we don't know enough yet. This has been one of those times when people are learning much more about the small businesses in their communities. And some of those are our clients who own those small businesses. And that's a wonderful outcome here because it makes us understand what it takes to make a small business run and stay in business. And I would say that they're worried about income, whether it is through a business or through employment. Most of the folks are being floated by the stimulus, I won't call it stimulus, I'm going to call it relief, by the relief so far. But it feels like, to them and to me, it feels like we're at a domino situation where at some point that's going to stop funding things. And will we be at a point socially where we can go make that income happen otherwise? I think that's what they are worrying about the most. That's what they're telling us.
I think income and cash flow has been on top of a lot of minds, especially if you're employed right now in restaurant and hospitality. It might even mean that you have to just look to other sources and maybe even change your profession for a time and do what you need to do, because from what I understand from the PPP, and I'm certainly not an expert, however, I understand that my clients are, and there are very, very specific guidelines as it relates to PPP, as it relates to books and records, as it relates to the retention of employees. So I think that one of the great things is to be able to talk it through with an advisor, because if you are a small business owner, but things that matter on both sides with your advisor, your personal and your business, because all of this is linked. And, I had the ability to be in a wealth management environment for 8 years and just be a fly on the wall. And really, at the end of the day, it's talking about matters that are really hard to navigate. There's the economic impact of things, and then there's the emotional impact that it's just, we're people.
Well, one thing that we've seen for clients, and this is a real silver lining, is I never want to overwhelm clients with how much I know that I can help them with, right? It's such a temptation to just keep pounding them with information as if they can take it all in. But in this environment, especially around the PPP and the other loans, people have gotten smarter much faster. They are hungry and thirsty for the information, and they are listening and taking it in. So they have gotten smarter faster about the size of their bank, what their bank can do for them, what bills should be paid, what forbearance means. It's not forgiveness, all of those things. So the clients have gotten smarter faster. So now I know they can take in even more going forward, and they're just going to be better for this experience once they get through it.
Yeah, I think that we're all going to be better. We all are. Again, at the beginning of this episode, we talked about how all of our spending patterns are different. Have you yourself noticed that your spending patterns are even different? I feel like asking a financial advisor that question.
So we've practiced intentional spending for decades now. That's what we're selling to people, the idea of intentional spending. However, one thing I am as guilty of as every other American, and I know you're all doing it because we can see the numbers. I have an OH order history with Amazon that is impressive for a grandma, and I've cut it off at the knees. If it's not health or safety related that I need within 24 hours, I'm not buying it from them. And I don't, I'm not an anti-Amazon or anti-Walmart person. I just don't need that much stuff anymore. And I had a reason to cut it off, and it's been fun to cut it off. And if I ever rejuvenate it again, it will be with local small businesses. Having said that, we have a lot of families in the client base and in our community and in our household, in our extended family, that are dealing with daycare. These people have more than $2,000 back a month after not paying for daycare. Someday they'll have to pay it again. But this brings up incredibly important conversations for, guess who? Women. Honey, you don't really make that much, and we'll look at all the money we're saving. Maybe you should stop working and take care of the kids. And if Bonnie's in the room, she's going, wait, let's do the math, because there is a 5 to 10 year period when any woman might not be able to justify working. Well, let's do the math if she stops, and eventually she'll get there, but we don't. If a person wants to work, this saving money can suddenly look like a windfall. And I think that I'm hearing some really interesting conversations. I want to support anyone who wants to shift their priorities, as long as it doesn't financially impair just the woman.
Yes, absolutely. If you are listening right now, there is a temptation, and I get it. And I'm hearing from you, Bonnie, that there's a short-term solution, or there's a short-term benefit that may severely offset a longer gain for a woman in particular. What does it look like on your resume also too, and on your vitae when you have taken time off and you are up against a candidate who didn't take time off?
And if you're telling yourself any other narrative, spend a week with me in divorce and watch a woman between the ages of 40 and 66 is the oldest woman we've asked to go back to the workforce. Ouch. And see if she would have rather been able to see the future and say, I'll keep my feet in, I'll keep my skills up, I'll develop an emergency account, I'll keep my contacts up, I'll stay open-minded, and I'll keep my resume up to date. Because that woman can fend for herself if something happens to her spouse. And a woman who doesn't have those things is at the mercy of whatever she can cobble together.
I get it. Ladies listening now, you not only got to get into that workshop, but again, you have to have that discussion. I've seen it, and you've seen it. You see it on a daily basis. This is your profession. So you're looking at women's lives through the lens of each decade. And while Bonnie might not, you have a crystal ball, in some ways, you do have that crystal ball of understanding what happens to women, especially as they get in latter decades where it does become really hard. What do you say? What choices are available to women in their 50s and 60s? I mean, ageism is a really thing about going back to work. Where does a woman like that even start to put her life back and rebuild the pieces?
It's pretty tough. And I would say I can certainly spend time telling people about that, but I'd much rather say, let's question our culture and let's not ever put ourselves there in the first place, because there are few choices. It's not that different for a man. A man who loses his career in his 50s is still going to have a problem, but a woman who loses it is really going to have a problem. One of the nonprofits we associate with is The Girl Link, moms and daughters between the ages of 12 and 18. Talking about everything, and money is one of the things. Let's change the conversation before we get there. It's called The Girl Link.
The Girl Link. Wow, the show notes are getting better and better. I'm so excited. These resources are incredible.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of cool things. We just have to tell each other about them.
One of the things that I think that you've been great about and what I like about what you're doing is this intentionality.
When I think about intentionality, so, my kids are grown. I don't have the drumbeat of a constantly noisy schedule. I had that for many years, and there were 14 moves in those years. It was exhausting.
Wow.
Yeah. So I sometimes say I'm surprised to even have a career, but you can fight for these things and you can get them, but it's not easy. But even then, I was as intentional as I could be about putting one foot in front of the other and building things. And I feel like today, with my larger family mostly on their own, I'm still doing that. So I'm intentional about how I build my business, because I'm going to sell my business someday. No time soon, but I will sell it. And there's intention of how I'm building it. I'm intentional about who I spend my time with, because time is my biggest asset. That's what's most important to me, and life is short. As intentional as I can be about my health, I wish I was more intentional about it. I exercise. I like food and drink way too much, but I have a deep pool of a few friends, not a shallow pool of a lot of friends. I just have a few people in the world I really hang with and trust, and I'm comfortable with that. I'm also intentional about being out in the world. I'm not comfortable being out in the world that much. It might surprise a few people, but I like being inside my world, odyssey of the mind, and I'll go out when I want to and when I have to. But so everybody should think about who they are and how they are and get the shoulds out. It takes time and reflection, and our society doesn't support reflection very much. We're very busy, and there's a lot of noise, and it's hard to get reflection. But I think for me, that's the gas, right? So if I can have a walk, I try to walk 5 miles a day. If I can get outside and clear my head, that's the fuel for reflection. And I don't have much to give if I can't get that time. I'm just spinning.
Oh, yeah. Because I mean, you're amid a lot of difficult conversations and a lot of difficult stuff. And just hearing some of your strategies and how you're thinking about things and the way that you go out and recharge, I think really for me, I find that inspiring and reminds us of the fact that don't treat life casually. Go through the motions of your life, whether or not it be financial decision making, whether or not it relates to your social and how you're spending the rest of your day and who you're hanging around with and who you're calling friend and where you're going out. And everything needs, I think, a framework. If we just stop and just really think about what it is that we're doing and getting into, we don't need to go through life in this harried fashion that a lot of us women find ourselves in. We go from moment to moment, thing to thing. I mean, just the other day I posted, if you want something done, to get a woman to do it. And then somebody said, well, I forgot exactly what, something along the lines like, oh, is it always correct? And I'm like, no, it's not always correct, but it's done.
Yeah.
And, right. And we have such a high sense, I think, as a gender. We're used to managing so many balls, but to a fault that sometimes it can just deplete you. And we have to be mindful, myself included, type A, workaholics. You have to learn how to slow down, smell the quintessential roses, and just wait before you react.
If you take some of that time to reflect, you might be surprised at what bubbles up in you that you didn't realize was part of you, because you can always hear what you're supposed to hear about, what you're supposed to think about, blah, blah, blah. But if you can let it bubble up and stay curious, I love to read. By the end of a workday, my eyes are quite tired, so I take my books in audio. There's so many solutions. There's a great book out there right now. It's actually a couple of years old, I think now, called The Future is Faster Than We Think. Back in the Depression, while the world was falling apart, in any given time period when the world is falling apart, there are always cool things going on. People are doing things, discovering things, building things. It's true today. It's hard to see when we're in the middle of something that's not positive. But when we talk to people about their hopes and dreams, we say, knock the doors off. Let us know what you're really thinking. We're not going to judge what can be done. The plan will tell us our limits. But aside from that, let's say, I just want to go out on the ocean twice a year and I got to get my head straight. I want to spend a week out there. Give me a boat. Do you need a boat, or can we get you a boat experience? Or if you've got 8 weekends a summer and you want that boat, can we get you the boat experience through a rental boat? Is there a boat owner that will lease the boat back to you? My point is reimagining, letting the mind flow, thinking of things without regard to guardrails until you meet up against them, either finance or, the actual availability of something. Start thinking about how can I get what I need without the big, if it's the idea of rent the runway, right? Maybe in your mind, twice a decade you care about dressing up. Don't own the dress, go rent it. And it's not renting everything. That isn't really what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that if you need time for reflection, carve it out. Draw the boundary. I swear to God, people will adjust. You just haven't tested it. And it might be bumpy, but go through the bumps. Get what you need, as long as it's coming from a good place. And it's that, oxygen first for you, give it to the person next to you after. If you take care of yourself, so much more falls into place than if you're constantly avoiding taking care of yourself and trying to play catch up with everyone. It just is a backward equation.
I love that advice. It does go back to that whole idea of the oxygen mask and making sure that we're okay, because then that reinvigorates us and allows us to do just a better job what we are doing. And this book recommendation has me fascinated too. So we'll make sure that is in the show notes as well.
A really good one, really fun.
Oh, and it is. Time is finite. I once was at a conference and saw Dandapani, who is a monk. And so he lived as a monk for 12 years. And he said that if you knew that if you started to look at time as finite every single day, it would cause you to act and behave differently and make different types of decisions.
We try so hard to get that concept to divorced women, and the way that we say it is similar. But what we say is, once you realize how much time there is, no matter how much time there is, you're going to be overwhelmed with how little time there is to do all you want to do. Once that comes to you and you're like, I know what I want to do, you're going to be overwhelmed by how little time there is, no matter how much time there is.
So do you think that you should go out and do it now and just say, hey, just a lot of us second guess. And right now, while we're in this type of weird kind of mode that we find ourselves in, a lot of us are doing that reflection that you're talking about, maybe finding other interests, other hobbies, other dreams that we want to pursue. What's your advice? Should we just go out and say, yes, we hardly have any time, is speeding up, and there's a lot less time than we think, and let's just do it?
So I believe it or not, even as an advisor, I always want to be really careful about telling someone else what they, quote, should or should not do. I will say, it's up to you. This isn't a dress rehearsal. Stop thinking small. Really start thinking bigger and test. One of my favorite user IDs is Risk It Now. And I put the year of my birth there, which was quite some time ago. Like many people my age, I've had friends and family pass way too early. It reminds you that this is it. And, most of what we would even explore isn't going to impact others in a negative way. I don't know what we're waiting for. And if a time like this doesn't make you question or reevaluate or confirm, that's okay too. Maybe you're doing everything just as you should be for yourself, your priorities, then I honestly don't know what it would take to wake you up to the possibilities in your own life.
One of the mantras or frameworks that you have formed is this whole idea of true wealth, because some of the very concepts that we are talking about today, it's the financial part, as important as it is, and it is, we need the economics to live, to take care of one another, for freedom of expression, to live the type of life that we want, to be able to give back. But at the end of the day, it's so much more than just what you have in terms of economics. And I think that you framed it brilliantly for me. I have your slide, which I hope you'll give us permission to share with the audience here too. But do you want to just kind of go through the essence of what I'm talking about, and that is what is true wealth? It really resonated for me as a woman, especially.
Well, thank you. So for most people, some of this will be very, very familiar, and it's certainly at this moment. The first one is great health, right? And so around that idea, we think that anyone who has experienced a major health event certainly gets this. But it's so interesting, and I'll take weight loss because that's one of my things I'm always sort of, quote, working on. At my age, I no longer want to live in the extremes. I want to take care of my health and be healthy. And great health, we do have both responsibility and an opportunity to control how that happens for us. So certainly if we're afflicted with a disease, because everyone always seems to pick the outlier, so I'll start there, that's not anything you may be able to change. But for most of us, we feed ourselves, we decide how much we move, we decide how much we sleep, and we decide who we'll hang with, who we worship, whatever. So great health, whether it's mental, physical, spiritual, whatever, that is both a responsibility and an opportunity. So that's where we start, because I think if you're lacking in physical health, you're going to have that as your sole focus. You won't be able to think about anything else because it's too hard. The next one is freedom of choice, and kind of back to how do you construct a life that has meaning for you, that doesn't include you being one of the Kardashians, for a reference most people will identify with. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's so much there to explore. We all know happy people who don't have a lot. And I would never be one of those people, because I have been broke in America, and I don't recommend it for anyone. It's humiliating and it's hard. But for people who don't have much and happen to be happy, they've made other internal choices, and you have those choices available to you. Purpose, something to do. A lot of times during this time of the virus, we read a lot of things about people saying things like, oh, you would put profits over people. And I often feel like that's said by someone who has their bills paid for them or is secure in their bill paying. It's important to have a purpose, a reason to get up in the morning. And if it's not work for you, then give back or find something to do. Make yourself busy somehow, and not so much busy, but there's that old saying, and I'm probably going to screw it up, but something along the lines of troubles here, make yourself useful. So purpose is important. And then something to give. It's a big world. There's enough for everybody, but sometimes it's really misaligned or, not fairly distributed. So I think we can all help that. And finally, inner peace. If you're a person who's conflicted by fear, which is a huge one, guilt, or maybe you learned what you lived as abuse as a child, seeking inner peace will let you do all of those other things better in the world. So we call true wealth, assuming, as you said at the beginning, your basics are taken care of, because if they're not, that's going to be your focus. We consider health, freedom of choice, purpose, something to give, and inner peace as the foundations. That's it. That's as good as it gets. And it's pretty good.
It's awesome. And we will be sharing that slide. And my recommendation to you, ladies and gentlemen, is to take that and to print it and just to put it out and remind yourself of how important those virtues. And we've talked a lot about it today. Bonnie brought up some really great points about making sure that we're just nurturing ourselves, taking care of ourselves, making sure that the information that we're putting into our minds and feeding ourselves on a daily basis is really the types of things that we should be paying attention to in the first place. And if something's going to rent space in our brain, it might as well be of the highest quality and efficacy. So I do have one last question before my final question that I ask everybody. I know, though, right now you're involved in some really cool things. I know that you were even traveling this week, which is pretty interesting, because to hear that somebody's traveling, right, brought me back to January, basically. So tell us the exciting things you're always doing. You're always giving, Bonnie. It's one of the great qualities about you. So what are you giving to now? What's coming up for you?
Thank you. One of the things that I'm newly involved in, but totally enjoying, is the George C. Marshall International Center in Leesburg, Virginia, where I live and practice. George C. Marshall, you will all recognize as the architect of the Marshall Plan, which helped Europe out after World War II. However, my part in the organization as a volunteer is to set up a 6-speaker series. And we're trying to bring the idea of leadership to mere mortals and leadership in daily life. I've talked about this at local leadership breakfast, the idea of how do you grow a leader? Where does that come from? And we're really not talking about corporations and management. We're talking about leaders who lead. And George C. Marshall had 3 qualities that I think are worth knowing about and emulating. And that is humility, hard to find in leaders today, but some have it. The ability to take action, to act, right? So we can all talk ourselves to death, but acting is taking that risk to act is what matters. And finally, speaking up. It wasn't comfortable or easy for him to take action and speak up in different places, but he did. And we have people throughout history who do that too. And my job is to help illuminate their stories and celebrate them and provoke mere mortals, you and I, and the people we care about, to think about those same 3 qualities and adopting them. It's scary to take action, but it is what moves the ball. It's scary to speak up. We risk being ridiculed or disliked, but it can be important to moving things forward.
I think that is absolutely outstanding. The humility, the action, and the speaking up. You're a leader of yourself. You're a leader of your own life. And it's the hard parts. I'm sure that you would agree with me, Bonnie, is that it's the hard times in our lives that build us. It's not the happy moments when things are going great. It's when you're basically tasting dirt and you're getting through a really tough period. That's actually what builds you. It's the same way that I've heard a similar metaphor used in weightlifting, right? If you're trying to make muscles, you're doing it by tearing the tissue and giving it resistance with weight. And the same can be said about your life. If you're just kind of casually going through life and everything's okay, which that's great. I'm happy if things are going well for you. When you do start to take action and you go through the tough parts, that is when you will have the most growth.
And I just feel one last point on that. We don't want anyone to not ask for help if they need it. We just don't want people expecting help because we are stronger and have more power than we realize, and then we are using.
Bonnie, that's amazing. It fits right into your whole true wealth of premise of true wealth and something to give. When does the speaker series kick off?
Next Wednesday at 2 p.m.
Okay. Oh, congratulations.
Thanks.
Congratulations. That's really awesome.
I'll send you the link.
Of course, I'll put it on the show notes. My goodness, that's so many great things that you're involved in. I'll kind of take my last question and join it with what we were just talked about and this idea of speaking up, because speaking up is really hard to do. And a lot of female leaders that we have had here in the suite, almost everybody has like a secret weapon of choice to bring that kind of superpower quality. What's yours, Bonnie Sewell?
So I keep a picture of my mom on my desk, and she's holding a camera. She's at a party, and she's got a great smile on her face. And what it reminds me of all the time is she never had an easy life. From the time she was 7 and had lost a kidney in a sledding accident, told she could never have kids, ended up having 3, all the way up to, I mean, she just has, if I ever write her life story, it's as tough a story as you can imagine. But she was a humble person. She worked her tail off. She risked things. One quick funny story about her to sort of tell you who she was. We lived on a street called Holmes, Holmes, in outside Chicago. We had an intersection near our house where almost every dinner, or several times a week at dinner, someone would crash into another car and we'd have a bloody person sitting in a chair at dinner. And she got so tired of it because she thought it was solvable. She sat out there and counted the cars, and she spent weeks gathering all her information. She went down to our little town hall meeting, and she got a stoplight there, and it took care of the problem. And they called her Mrs. Holmes derisively instead of Carol Ashby in the newspaper. But the idea is, she took a chance. She was a busy woman. And anyway, I just feel like she set so many examples of, you know what, this is it. You get one chance, make it worth it.
I couldn't have said it any better. I just want to leave that alone. Your mom is just, what an incredible picture. You guys can't see it right now. I love what your mother stood for. She reminds me of my mom and what the incredible struggles and a lot of similarities having to do it all. So thank you for that. That's an incredible story. I will think about that for the rest of the day today. So Bonnie, what if people want to get in touch with you again to have a conversation and, to your point, to ask for help?
We have a connect page instead of a contact page on our website, and the website is AmericanCapitalPlanning.com.
Bonnie Sewell, I can't thank you enough for being in the suite today. We are all incredibly grateful for your stories, for your lessons, for the resources that you shared today, and you've made us that much better for it. So I'm truly thankful.
Wonderful speaking with you. Thank you for having me.
You too. You're listening to In the Suite, a podcast that shares amazing stories of women in business in the financial services and the wealth management industry. This podcast is proudly sponsored by C-Suite Social Media, a digital marketing and social media agency for C-Suite leaders in finance and technology. You can visit csuitesocialmedia.com to learn more and for show notes from today's broadcast. And thank you so much for listening and subscribing and helping to support this podcast with your reviews. It means so much. Please, if you know a woman who may benefit from this episode on divorce with Bonnie Ashby Sewell, please pass these free resources along. And lastly, if you would like to share the name of a successful woman in financial services we should interview in the suite, please send it to me at tina@csuitesocialmedia.com. Thank you again for listening.